And now it's time for the voters to speak. Prior to the forum, we asked people who were not comfortable coming to the mic if they had a question. And we had, I think, 3 questions asked. I'm going to ask this question, and after that, it's open to you. I would ask that when you get ready to ask a question, if you would come down front to the podium and give the name of the person you want to answer the question. If you want all candidates, make sure you tell them that. And the question I have is for each candidate, and it's for someone who did not put the name on the card, but the question is, what can you bring to the table to help assure unity on your board and with the other elected bodies? You can start with me then, if they want.
I can start with that. Well, number one, I have been very, very, very active in the community. And whether it's having a good relationship talking with either J.D. Williams, Sam Gaskins, the mayor, I've been out there. And when I go to a ribbon cutting, when I go to an event, they're there, I'm there, we're constantly communicating. And I feel that is where it starts, is that you've got to be in communication with them. You got to know where they're coming from. You got to know what their, lack of a better term, what their quirks are, what they're looking for, what they want to see. We're in a give and take situation. It's not going to be all about me, and it's not all about them. We need to work together to, like I say, improve the quality of life for the city of Sanford.
Well, I can work with black, Spanish, and white. I have no trouble getting along with just about anybody. When I worked at the Sanford Herald in the circulation department, they had a policy that if you didn't, at that time, the kids that delivered the paper would collect the money, the 30 cents. The paper was 30 cents a week, Monday through Saturday. And if you did not get the money on Saturday night, it was not going to be there Monday for you to get. And I was in charge of every newspaper boy in the city, whether they were black or white. And so I would have been at Donald and Marshall McCabe's house at 1131 James Street on many a time at 9 and 10 o'clock on Saturday night to collect their money. When you work at the newspaper, you have to treat everybody fair. And that's literally where I grew up at the newspaper. So you bend over backwards to treat everyone equal. I remember when George Wallace was standing in the doorway in Alabama blocking the people, Terry Sanford was discreetly working here to be sure that integration went smoothly. The first 2 black children in the freedom of information, the freedom of choice in school year 67-68 was Mildred Smith and Thomas Golston. They were both in my graduating class, and they were the first 2 black students to graduate at Sanford Central High School. Now, Thomas didn't come to the 40th reunion, but Mildred came. And it wasn't a big deal to me because I had grown up in the tobacco field with the black kid Anthony Fox next to me, and I'm priming my road. We worked side by side. The paper boys worked side by side. I can get along with any elected official, anybody, no matter what race or creed they have. Thank you.
I think it's a really great question. It's actually something that's come up a lot in the conversations that I've been having with people. There is a sense of frustration right now with government that we are not able to get along. You see it a lot in, obviously in national politics. For me, bringing back an era of civility into our government is so important. We do need to get along. My way of thinking at it is if everybody comes to the table with an open mind, with no personal interest other than what's in the community's best interest, this is the beginning of a really great start for how we can get along, because the goal in mind is that we do our best to serve the people and serve our citizenry. So that would be what I would bring to the table.
I am professionally an advocate, a counselor, and at its heart, a persuader. I represent clients in this courtroom and across the way on a daily basis of every race, nationality, creed, demographic. I represent them in their property interests, their freedom, and they depend on me. And they get in that representation a zealous advocate. As I am in these courtrooms on a daily basis, I generally have a righteous cause, and it is my job to persuade either opposing counsel or a judge or a jury of the righteousness of my client's cause. As a member of City Council, I would hope to use that persuasion to bring about unity by convincing the other members of the council of the righteousness of the cause for which I advocate. But unity itself is overrated. Terrible things have been done by the majority who were united in this country and around the world. What you will get from me as a person who advocates for the people of Ward 4 based on the convictions that I have for what is right. And if that means that I am one person persuading 6 others to do the right thing, then that's great. If I am one person standing alone for what is right, then I will do that too. Because in the end, doing the right thing is primary and having unity is secondary.
Well, our approach working with the council with the idea of listening to everyone. If you can listen and be able to agree, to disagree, but the main thing is you are there for the people and what's best for the people of Sanford. Don't make it different what you think. You are there for the best interests of the people of Sanford. I worked with many people over the years in this position, and I can get along with anybody. But what I'm there for is to do what's best for everybody. Ward 4, Ward 5, 6, 7, the whole city. And you have to look at that each time you go to the table, deal with your fellow council members.
Well, you know, there's an old saying that the proof is in the pudding. And I truly believe that. My years here in Sanford, a lot of you know me, I ran the Sanford Golf Course for 31 years. I coached Little League football. I've done all those things that young people do. I served on the Lee County Board of Education for 12 years. During that time, my phone rang many times. And never did I ask, where do you live? That was not a question. I was there, elected at large to serve all people. And I think I did that the proper way. Most issues that come to city government, just as it has at the Central Carolina Community College, which I was blessed to be elected as chairman for 4 consecutive years, all that the present policy would allow me to be elected. My wife gave me a real good piece of advice before I took over. She said, Bobby, it's not about you, it's about them. And I tried to do that. In order to work with any board, any group of people, reasonable people can come to reasonable decisions if they respect each other. And they come with a true meaning to help us. I feel like I have learned well how to do that. That does not mean I agree all the time. Most of you out there, and I know many of you know, I don't do that. But when it becomes the decision of the whole, I know how to become a member of that board and work, because it then becomes my policy also. I think that I have the ability to serve all people all the time. And if a policy or an issue comes up, if it can't be discussed on top of the table, it probably should not be discussed. The truth will always stand on its own. If you do the right thing for the right reasons, even though people disagree with you at the first moment, they eventually will understand that you meant well. I do feel like that I will be that person for you. And I promise you, when you call me on the phone, I'll never ask you what your address is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidate. I neglected to remind you that we want you to answer questions in 2 minutes. And now it is open to you, the voting public. Please come to the floor, state your name, and direct the question to the candidate of your choice.
My name is Joanne Hooker, and I have a question for the at-large and Ward 4. When you say that you're going to foster growth, and you're going to improve the quality of life for the citizens in your area, explain to me what you, when you say you foster growth and improve the quality of life, explain to me some of the things you intend to do. Okay.
I'd be happy to start. First of all, I think if we look back at every wasteful or abusive government program that has ever existed, we will find good intentions and a certain amount of ego that one person or 7 people knew better how to do things than the individuals that make up our private sector, whether it's folks opening a business or growing a business or running their family. It would be my intention not to try on my own or through a council of 7 people to decide what's best entirely for every minute sector of our economy, but to foster an environment through lower taxes, lower regulatory burdens, to make us an environment where people can and are encouraged to start their own business, grow their business, hire people, without feeling that, for example, there's a 13-cent extra tax on top of already existing city taxes in the downtown Sanford area. I gather that the design at the time that was instituted was to take that money and do something good with it. But I think what you've done in effect is discourage folks from locating there. They'd be better off locating their business in a strip mall or somewhere out in the county. If we want to encourage growth in those high-profile areas of our town, like the downtown districts, we do better to encourage them to do so by not penalizing them for being there. So my philosophy, generally speaking, is one of free markets and letting the private sector do the work in the way that each individual actor is going to allow the market to work for them and it'll work for us as a whole.
Okay, then, can I just interject this? Okay. You are talking, when you're talking, you're generalizing for the citizens of your Ward 4. Can you tell me the quality of life that you're working for them? When you're talking about the people and the businesses, that's good. But if you were to be elected for that particular section, Ward 4, would you be able to walk the streets in any community and try to alleviate the crime that you're talking about? What are your plans to do? When you're putting more people on the streets and you're saying that you're having the police officers in the court with the people that's committing the crime, then that's when I tie the court system where the police officers are not on the street. So what are you doing to fix some of the crime that you're referring to?
Well, let me be clear. If we're moving to the crime issue, I think it is demoralizing to a public to call and be engaged with a police department and get someone out there on the scene that either one, and we've seen this, doesn't do anything, lets the person go or doesn't follow up, or 2, actually files a charge. The person comes to court, but nothing happens, and they're right back out on the street. The next time something happens with that person or a similar situation, a demoralized public is not as inclined to call the police department to deal with that situation. If we have officers here in court on their case days, because it is a priority of the city that they see their case through to conclusion, whether that's the acquittal of an innocent person or the conviction of a guilty person, to see that case through to its conclusion rather than simply file it and be done, then what you'll find is a greater sense of trust among the public that if they make that call, something's going to happen. But also, maybe that officer is in court today, and incidentally, they're asked to be in court a lot of times without pay. They simply get comp time, and that's something that's got to change. We can make that a priority to make sure that that's part of their job, is to be in court on the day that their cases come to court. But also, if they're in court that day, maybe that person isn't back out on the street tomorrow. I hope that answers your question.
I'll answer that after lunch as well.
All right. One of the things that I think in any community, there has to be one major thing. And in order to have good communities, there has to be hope, there has to be effort, there has to be the citizens in that community buying into what you're trying to do. What has happened at the old W.B. Wicker campus is an example of what a community can do. Government has to help those people help themselves. You do that by going into the community, being a part of the community, and in most instances, I must compliment Mr. McNeil. He is known as Mr. Night Owl. But that has brought about a very good rapport amongst different sections of the community. You cannot neglect any part of the community. The value of your home, the value of your property means just as much as mine. We have regulations, we have policies at the city. I stayed there 31 years, so I know they're there. But the one thing is you have to enforce those equally all throughout the city. Not just pick a section, get you a newspaper article and talk about what you're going to do. You got to go in there and do it. I do believe that education is the main thing that we can do in every community. In order to have jobs here and people coming for jobs, there has to be an educated workforce, and if there has never been any success, the people that you're trying to educate don't know what it is. You have got to have a program to help those people obtain hope and success. Thank you.
Carol Carlson. And I've got a question. First of all, a little statement. We too are property owners and a small business in downtown Sanford. And I gladly pay that 13 cents extra to see how we can help other small businesses. We help through awnings, through any kind of restoration, anything that is sprucing up their business. But anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way. And I would like for you all to share with us, what is your vision for Sanford? Do you have a vision? Where do you see us going within the next 2 years, 5 years?
I can start if you want. Seems to be working well this way. My vision, Carol, is to see continued improvement. Obviously, the bypass is being completed. Should be done by 2013 on the north end. They might be slipping a bit on schedule, I understand. But once that is done, we're going to remove a lot of truck traffic off of Horner Boulevard. Along with that, what I'd like to see happen is improvements on Horner Boulevard, whether it be plantings, whether it be slowing traffic down a bit so people can see where they're going to be turning. In addition, slowing down the speed limits on the side streets. You know, traditionally people have all their little secret routes that they take to get to Lowe's when they're leaving the north end of Sanford. We need to get the folks back on Horner Boulevard. And you say 2 to 5 years. If we get to that point, we'll be doing well. It's going to be, grant money has dried up. As you well know, we were talking the other day about downtown Sanford. I'd love to see continued improvements to downtown Sanford. You mentioned the $8 million proposal. I'd love to see that come up for a bond vote. To have our downtown be vibrant, and it's great now, and I as well own a building downtown. I would love to see it take to the next level. I'd like to see it become a 24/7 community. Jonesboro has the same potential. We can't ignore the fact that Jonesboro holds a lot of what is 14% of our population, which is Hispanic. And that itself, I was meeting with some Hispanic businessmen today, and I said, you guys need to get together and you need to put a festival together. You need a Hispanic festival down there. You need to go ahead and bring in vendors. Do a, lack of better terms, we do a pottery festival, they need to do a Hispanic festival. It'll be well attended, it'll be just I'm sure it would be a wonderful event.
Growth is going to come. It's not a question of if. It is going to come. North Carolina is the fastest growing state this side of the Mississippi River. And more people are going to continue to come here. The question is, do you control your growth or do you let it be like weeds, just sprouting up everywhere? So you want to control the growth that takes place. As far as downtown Sanford, we're in amazing shape compared to a lot of other cities. Your group that is trying to get the utility work underground, that would really be an asset. It would really look great. I've seen some cities where that's done. There's one in Florida called Celebration, sponsored by Disney. And of course, you can't even have your trash cans by the street there. They come and get them, and when you look at it, it looks like a movie set. It's so unreal. But downtown, you have people moving around. As far as quality of life, I imagine when a lot of prospective people come here that are going to consider us to open a plant, they land at the airport. They probably pick them up at the airport and bring them into town on Hawkins Avenue. And if it was me, I'd then turn left on Wellstone Street and show them our municipal building. Take a right on 7th Street, make sure they saw the new high school under construction, drop by CCCC, and then tour the lower Jonesboro section where the static plants are and so forth. So you want the area to look good. The code enforcement with the city of Sanford receives 5,000 to 7,000 calls a year. That's 100 to 140 calls each and every week. But it's limited as to what they can do. If a house is not, if it just looks bad, they can't do a thing. If it's got broken windows, they can. And the current law will let you, no matter how ragged your car is, if you cover it with a tarp, it can stay out there forever. And what they need to do is put a moratorium where you cover it with a tarp for 6 months. Maybe you need to gather the money to get it fixed, but it needs to come to a point where you can't just leave it out there forever. And the quality of life will take care of itself.
I appreciate the question. I think that this is an amazing period of time. We have, in the 2 to 5 year period, we really have an opportunity to stage ourselves to be able to take advantage when the economy turns around. This is the moment where we can make ourselves ready to be attractive for private investors to be coming in, for businesses to start, for change to really happen here in Sanford. And I think getting some of the projects that have been planned underway, stuff in downtown, stuff in Jonesboro, stuff in East Sanford, all over Sanford. I think that as we work in our neighborhoods, restore historic homes, start working on those downtown projects and actually get them underway so people can see tangible progress after all this talking, I think is going to get people excited about Sanford and about where we're going. And I think when you look to where we're going to be 10 years from now, I think it's going to be marvelous. I think the work we start now is just going to build upon itself, and I think we're in a really good position to be able to do that.
I've got an idea for what would be great, but I think the question about a council person's vision gets back to that ego thing I was talking about earlier. With more of the passing of Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, a man that had great vision for his company, his products, things that changed the world. Every regulation, every little tax stifles the creativity of an entrepreneur like him. And it is the collective vision of each little person that has a business for where they're going to take their business, where you're going to take your family, how you're going to grow, how you're going to market, how you're going to get customers in your building, that no one person should have the ego to think they know what's best for that entrepreneur and that entrepreneur and that entrepreneur. Collectively, our wisdom is far greater than any one council member. So my philosophy is one in which we take off the constraints of those people that would have those individual visions. I'm glad that you're happy to pay a 13-cent surtax. I would suggest that a private group that collects voluntary dues and then hands them out would be a proper mechanism for making life improvements in downtown of that nature. Now, the city government is responsible for things like the streetscape that we're talking about at DSI, where we're talking about sidewalks and trees on city property and things of that nature. That is a core function of city government, is what we're doing with utility lines, or whether we're going to have a one-way street with diagonal parking. And that is absolutely something the city council has to look at and have a plan for downtown. But generally speaking, I'm going to have a philosophy that favors private enterprise, private charity, private business groups like the Chamber, nonprofits like DSI, that is going to favor that over public spending and public vision.
I think that the question was, what is your vision for downtown in the next 2 or 3 years? One of the first things I would like to see done downtown is a major cleanup and have the city, which I have talked about with the council numerous times, having a cleanup detail from the city to make sure that all streets through downtown are cleaned up. The other thing that we need to have down there are gateway signs to show where things are. You come into town, you want to know where the Timber Theater is, it should be a sign that's showing where the Timber Theater is. Underground utilities would be a great improvement for downtown. A store, some kind of grocery store in the center of downtown, some kind of market that would bring more people into downtown, which would make it function a lot better. So these are the kind of things that I would like to see in the future for downtown in the next 2 or 3 years.
I'd like to sit here tonight and tell you that in 2 years I had a great vision. However, this issue downtown has been studied by property owners and others. Some better business people in our community have been involved in this for some time. It goes back many years of studying how to help downtown Sanford look better and be better and be more viable. I truly believe, as Mr. McNeil just said, you have to clean it up. It has to be well lit. People have to feel safe. People have to know that it is a good place to come. But the bottom line is, if we don't continue to grow the entire city with quality of life issues, there's not going to be anybody coming downtown because they're not coming here to live. The only way that business can survive is with street traffic. People coming in, people visiting businesses. And that is done by working on your whole community to make it. There has to be an advocate at City Hall who is willing to step forth and say, hey, we've studied the problem long enough. We have a document here, and I've read this document, the vision plan for the Chamber, and you people who've been working homeowners. And I think it's very commendable that 13-cent tax we're talking about here tonight was voted on by you people, and you voted it on yourselves. So it's time to put the plan in action. You make a motion at a meeting, you talk to other board members to help you, and you accomplish something. Then private investment will come, quality of stores will increase, we'll be giving forth more choices for people to come. You've got to give them a reason to come, or they don't come. That's what I say.
Thank you all.
Next question.
My name is Keith Clark. I've spent a good part of my Mondays in the last 2 years studying the methods by which Commissioner Reeves questions those people who appear before the commissioners. I shall see what kind of grade he gives me when I'm done.
I'm glad you said that, or you're going to get to the question.
I have a question pertaining to this question of the downtown assessment. This was proposed by candidate. I'd like to ask that candidate to answer first how much that would cost the city, how much would that take away from the investment in downtown in dollars, how would it be replaced, and is it going to be therefore spread out over me as a resident owner? I want to see a good downtown, but if they vote their tax in, I think they ought to have it. And I'd like to then hear from each of the other candidates about exactly where you stand on that issue.
There's a temptation anytime you talk about taxes to consider that it's a fixed number. But all taxes are dynamic. If we are taxing, for example, property valuation, the higher the tax is, the less the incentive there is for the property owner or potential purchasers to improve that property and increase its value, because they would thereby increase the tax. So these things are in flux and they change. Now, if we believe that a vibrant downtown Sanford or downtown Jonesboro with active businesses instead of empty storefronts is something that would attract folks to come live and work in Sanford, then we should be promoting and encouraging businesses to be in downtown Sanford and downtown Jonesboro, because it benefits the community as a whole. I don't have enough time to talk about whether it does or doesn't, but if we assume for the sake of argument that it does benefit the whole community, all the taxpayers, homeowners, to have those vibrant downtowns with full storefronts, not empty ones, then we should be encouraging that growth. So if there's to be taxpayer funds spent on that, I think it's reasonable to say that that'll come from the entire budget, not from some particular surcharge. I think you also would find that if you did the math, that the amount collected is actually exceeded by the amount spent. So that 13 cents doesn't even cover what generally the city is asked to spend in downtown Sanford and downtown Jonesboro.
I didn't get an answer to the question of how much was brought in by that amount by that tax.
I'm not sure that's relevant to the question, which is, should we have it or not?
Well, maybe you got one out of the other candidates.
Okay. What it is $50,000 to $60,000 is what they collect. And we were at a meeting the other morning that they made that statement. Yeah. The interesting thing about that tax, and I understand where Ed's coming from, but when I bought my building downtown, I didn't look at the tax rate. I looked at the building, I looked at the value of what I was getting for the money I was spending. The one problem we do have currently downtown is we're fairly undervalued. You can still buy a building downtown inexpensive. That being said, the tax rate at this point in time is not keeping businesses away. What we've got going on in our downtown is, and so when you talk about the streetscape project, that's where, when you look at the city of Greenville, we were down in Greenville a year and a half ago, amazing downtown, and we were discussing whether it was private money or public money, but what did happen is they have got a vibrant downtown. It is amazing. They've moved the curbs out at the intersections. There's outdoor seating everywhere. There's all sorts of shops and breweries and restaurants and you name it. It is just an amazing place to go to. What we really need to do is make our downtown more attractive. That's what really has to happen. Once that happens, the building values will go up. We could pull that tax, but at this point in time, that tax is paying for music in the park. I think that happens probably 12 times in the summer. Movies in the park. It's a great, great social function. It's a wonderful place to go, and I'm actually disappointed that more people don't take advantage of it.
You have to admire a group that will tax themselves. Now, in 1986, Buddy Holler was selling the Lee Furniture Building, which is Shops of Steel Street, and it was $65,000. Now, we had a baby in October of 1984 and another one in September of '85, and I wanted to buy that building. It was $65,000 at the time. My wife wanted a new house, and she won. So I didn't end up at the corner of Steel Street and Carpet Street. But I had this vision of a downtown mall entitled Made Here. Now, I have to tell you, at that time there was a lot more stuff made here than there is now. We had Bluebell, which made ladies' tops. We had White Knitting, which made ladies' hose. We had Apex Safety Company that made hard hats. We had Curry Company that made men's pants. I mean, there were any number of plants where a finished product came off the line. Well, use a little imagination and you could open a business like that downtown today. Cody closed their outlet because they got robbed and they didn't want to mess with it anymore. And somebody would get the Cody people, the Arden people, and maybe Tryon makes a home air cleaner. If you would open a store that was entitled Made Here, you could really promote it, and that would give you something downtown that no one else has.
I think that, like with all taxes, I mean, you shouldn't be taxing if it's not necessary to have a tax. But I think that any time, you know, a group of people gets together, sees a need in real good that can produce, it makes sense. And real good has come out of it. You can see when you're around downtown what has actually come out of having that tax there. And I think that the downtown has actually been able to leverage having that tax into a lot of public support from people for giving more money, public money to downtown because they know how invested and truly committed all of the downtown merchants are to the success of downtown. And I think that it has really multiplied on itself and, you know, I think it's up to them really to keep up that tax if that's what they want. And so I wouldn't be in favor of personally getting rid of something that people had wanted themselves to impose on their district.
The city of Sanford gives money to downtown Sanford and downtown Jonesboro. The tax that Ed is talking about is a tax that the people downtown want to put on themselves to enhance whatever things that they want for extra. We're talking about the music in the park. You have awnings. You have other things that some of the people in downtown Sanford want. And the city can't provide everything for downtown and not provide things for the people out in the neighborhood. So I think the enhancement that they do with their money downtown is up to them. And if they want to be taxed, that's up to them if they want to be taxed. It's not up to the city to take it away from them.
Well, it's not often that people vote taxes upon themselves. And I certainly would not be interested in taking it away at this point in time unless they asked me to, because it was theirs. The other thing is, there is evidence that some of these funds that they have been investing, plus Mr. McNeil's right, there are funds coming in. The only question that might, I think, come from this is, are we putting enough funds in to really make a difference. You know, it's hard to convince people you're really doing anything if you do it a little bit at a time. They like to see action, and they like to see a substantial improvement immediately. Our culture works that way. And once they see that, they have a tendency then to become investors, both in efforts and in money. I do believe that the things that Mr. McNeil just spoke about, the Depot Park and other things like that, is a tremendous improvement. We've done an awful lot along Moore Street, along the street there right by the railroad track. It looks very good. But this has been going on a long, long time. And in order to have a substantial change, there has to be facelift, there has to be extra effort put in that place to make it look good, for citizens to feel good about it. I don't think that a little bit of money is going to make a big difference unless we actually decide to do it. The city has a decent fund balance. All cities are required by institutional government to have fund balances. Maybe we need to look at some creative ways of financing to try to fund the vision that's been put forth by the people who've been studying this issue for the last 20 years. I would say that that would be our best way to bring about real change uptown. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Are there other questions?
Hello, my name is Brian McGowan, and I have two questions, but they're yes or no questions. So you should be pretty fast. The first question is, do you support continued city funds going to nonprofits?
Yes.
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 It depends on purpose. And I said this in the chamber meeting the other day.
He failed to answer the question. Move on.
Well, I'm not 2 minutes to answer
The man said yes or no.
Thank you, Mr. Mason.
Yes.
My heart tells me yes, my business sense tells me no.
All right, and my second question is, do you support taking city money and using them to either start a tourism bureau or to continually fund a tourism bureau?
Yes, absolutely, without a doubt.
I have to say either yes or no.
Yes, sir.
Come back to me and I'll give the explanation. Yes.
Yes.
Repeat the question.
Would you support city money going to either initially fund to start one to run on its own, a tourism bureau, or to continually fund a tourism bureau?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, Randall, can I tell you the complete story? Now, we almost had.
If you got 2 minutes, you can tell.
I got 2 minutes and I can tell.
All right.
If you currently, if you spend the night at a motel in Sanford, you're going to pay a small fee, and that will go towards the Civic Center. Now, they were trying to get a quarter to a half-cent tax added, and everybody that spent the night in a motel in Sanford, North Carolina, that money would have gone to a tourism. But the representative in the General Assembly will not introduce that bill unless everybody is on board. And at one point, it looked like everybody was on board. It wouldn't have cost us a single penny. Everybody that spent the night here would have paid some. But then somewhere along the plank, somebody took the wrong move, and it did not get introduced. Now, that's how you pay for it with tax money, but not our tax money, unless you had a fire-sure house and you had to spend the night at the motel, or you're up to no good one.
Before you answer that, Mr. Powell, before you answer, Mr. Page had a time as the first question. Now you have 2 minutes to give your explanation on that first question.
Thanks, sir. Hey, my family works for a nonprofit. Work for Easter Seals, UCD, North Carolina, Virginia. And one of the things that they do is they serve children, and they get contracts from the state of North Carolina. Now, when you have a function that government wants to pursue, that can be done better more effectively and cheaper by a nonprofit entity, I'm all in favor of privatizing such functions. To be charitable with other people's money is not a function for government to be involved in my opinion. I think that we each individually have a responsibility to be charitable, but with our own money.
Thank you. Ms. Powell.
I'd like to speak to the question about the tax, motel tax. When this issue came up, I happened to be chairman of the CCCC Board of Trustees. And when this issue came up, going back, when that was started, Dennis Wicker got through the legislation that the money from the tax was supposed to go to the Civic Center. There's a lot of people in this room who have rented the Civic Center. The only problem they had is the acoustics were so bad they couldn't hear when they got there. Now, if we had allowed that to be split down the middle, the college would have had to give the Civic Center back to the county commissioners because we could not afford it. We had problems there that we could not fix because we could not get the money to fix it. Because the only money we get is what we rent for and that tax. Now, tourism is a wonderful thing, but they were both one and the same. But the money was not there. So the Community College Board of Trustees went on record as being opposed to that kind of a division. And the legislator at the time, Mr. Love, did not enter that into legislation because there was not unanimity between the parties to get it done. And if it could be done where the Civic Center would not suffer, I would have no problem. But I would still be opposed to it today, and that's exactly what I said when the county commissioners asked me as chairman what I thought. Thank you.
Thank you for your answers.
Next question.
A factor affecting our growth will be the completion of the 545 loop around to US 1, which raises the prospect of growth coming out of US 1 from Raleigh. Their choices will be for developments to develop here or developments to develop in Chatham County. We have invested money in a water system and upgrade the sewers. I read in the paper that places in Chatham County want us to sell them our water and sewer capacity. Well, that is our advantage in economic development if we can offer it. And I would like to know from each candidate, if your view is it that we should sell the excess capacity or that we should reserve it to make sure we can have a more attractive offer for developers and businesses that want to relate here. Where do you stand on that issue?
Currently, we have over 1,000 available lots to build on in Lee County. The last thing I want to tell our local builders is that we have now sold water and sewer rights to Chatham County so they can go ahead and start building the houses that they thought would have been built in Lee County. We have people that have been paying their water bills 40, 50, in Jimmy's case, maybe 80 years. And every little bit of that water, or there's a little bit of that water bill that goes into infrastructure every time you pay that bill. And these folks have been investing in that water system. And the last thing they want to do, we just had another increase. The last thing they want to see is us selling our water to Pittsboro or our sewer services to Pittsboro. And the thing that people have said, and I've heard the argument go around, well, we're going to sign a contract, we're only going to go 3 years, we're only going to go 5 years. Trust me, good night with Sass. If he gets that thing into a court of law, there's no way we're going to get our water or sewer back in 5, 10, 15 years.
Well, the capacity's there. Once the wastewater treatment plant is totally remodeled by 2014, it'll have the capacity for 12 million gallons a day, and currently it's doing 4.5. And the water plant has a capacity for 12 million gallons, and at this point we're doing 6. With what state, they call it regionalization. They want a limited number of discharges. So what they would love to have is cities like Sanford selling the water and the service to the smaller communities like Golston or what have you. But once you enter into that contract, you got to be sure you can get out of it if you need the capacity at some point down the road. We're extremely lucky. There's nothing any more magnificent than to be in the air and see that photograph where the Hall River and the Deep River come together. And of course, we're the first city to extract water from it, and as the growth takes place to the north, we're going to have to compete with those people, because I agree with you, they're going to try to tap into it too. So any agreement you get into, you better be sure you can get out of it.
I'd like to add to that the fact that I'm concerned that if we don't use the capacity at this point, they're going to take away our water rights. If you're sitting there with a huge amount of water that has been assigned to us and we aren't using it, we run the risk of the fact that for them saying that we don't need it. And so actually by being the regional water supplier, I think we're actually in a much better position of strength to actually be able to retain those water rights from the state.
But Jim hit the nail on the head. It'd be great to, have contracts with other areas, municipalities, counties to sell that water and defray the expenses that we have to pass along to the local folks, because we can charge the outsiders more. But only if you can get out of it. Only if, when we need that capacity, we can take it back.
I would favor selling water to the other counties if in the case we need to get the water for ourselves. We'll have a way out of in a contract that we could back out of. Just as Ed and Jimmy said, we don't need to sit there with 12 million gallon capacity and let it just sit there. If we can sell it and make some money and lower the prices for the citizens within the city that's paying for the water or the sewer. So I would favor that if we could have a way to back out of it in some kind of way when we need it.
We're already selling water. We've been selling water to Chatham County for some time. Also, I agree totally with a couple of the gentlemen here. There's nothing wrong with selling water. We have two funds in city government. One is general fund and one is called an enterprise fund. The federal government requires the enterprise fund to be self-supporting. Now, there is no problem with contracts are entered into every day. That's why attorneys work. And you have to have the ability to end that contract when it's no longer in the best interest of either or both parties. And in most all public contracts, that clause is there. And it's been upheld over the states by many people. I don't think you can afford to mortgage your future. And the only real problem I see with selling for water or sewer capacity until you really need it is that the state of North Carolina does try to control the amount of sewage and the amount of water going into the river. Our biggest problem will come from the north when they try to take our capacity away. They also have what they call regional things now. And the region means just what it says. If they can steal your capacity, they will. And you have to be ever vigilant about that. But at the present time, if we have dead capacity, I call it, it's not being used, yes, I would be in favor of selling it. But only if you can protect yourself.
Thank you. Next question.
Hey, my name's Richard Whittaker. We've had mention of crime that Cody closed up his outlet because of a robbery. Mr. McNeil's namesake park had somebody shot in it. Recently we've had the tragedy with the child being shot. For each of the candidates, what will you do to make crime in Sanford go down with the knowledge that our chief of police has been doing it for a very, very, very long time and should be very, very experienced at stopping crime. And also, for the Jonesboro ward, how would you do it for your specific area? And given that much of the answers might have been about downtown Sanford, now that the Jonesboro ward eclipses just a couple blocks where candidate Nestor lives, how does that affect Jonesboro finally getting something done for it, whereas all the money's been going to downtown Sanford for so long? Thank you.
I'll be happy to take that. This really goes to the heart of what I've been trying to. I think Jonesboro really, really needs a voice. I live in Jonesboro. I think it needs attention that has been lacking, I think, in the last few years. I don't think that you can't have both. I really think that these things can actually be mutually, inclusive of each other. We can support downtown and still really get Jonesboro back to being a vibrant place and putting attention to it. And the issue of crime is a huge issue for people in Jonesboro as it is for people all across the city, and there have been some horrible and very public crimes, violent crimes, and it's really struck to the heart of a lot of neighborhoods. And I think we really do need to bring the police, the community and neighborhood policing, we need to strengthen that. Whether the police needs more support, more resources, I think we need to figure out what do they need to get that relationship to be stronger, focusing on really positive things that can help that National Night Out, improving neighborhood watches. I've talked to a number of people that had ideas, more another mobile crime unit, possibly police substation, some type of community center where people feel comfortable going that can really work towards making these neighborhoods safer. But I think that engaging in that community conversation and paying attention to neighborhoods that have been neglected is going to make a huge difference in that. I really appreciate that question.
Richard, I'm going to try to speak first this time rather than last this time. First off, I think you had a three-part question. But I would point out that the crime rate in Sanford City is one of the lowest crime rates in North Carolina, in a city this size. I would continue to do the things that are being done and anything else we could do to enhance our police department. We have had, I think, a very successful police chief for a long time who's probably thinking about retiring. However, if the police department knew exactly where the crime was going to be each time, I'm sure they would be very interested in being there to take care of it before it happened. But we have had...
They happen in some of the reports.
Okay.
They happen in the same area most all the time.
Okay. We have had some very terrible things happen in the last 6 or 8 months. But I'd like to point out there's only 2 major crimes that I know of in the last 15 years here that have not had an arrest made. I did not say conviction, I said arrest, because the police gather evidence and present it to this gentleman in the middle here, and they take it from there. But Jonesboro has to be treated, I'm running at large. At large means to me the same thing it has all years. That's everybody in the confines of the city of Sanford. We can't do for one place what we won't do for another. We have to prioritize as we see fit to do it, because we only have so much money to throw at the problem at a time. It's all about money. But I think certainly Jonesboro has a unique value, and I have lived in East Sanford, I have lived in Jonesboro, and I've lived in West Sanford. And I can assure you, I know a little bit about all three. But the biggest thing that Mr. McNeil hit on tonight was about transit-type people. However, it's just like it is at the college. We had a tragic crime take place there a few years back. But we serve the public. we cannot preclude who's going to do what. But I assure you that if we put the resources there, the police will continue to do a good job, which I think they do a good job. But in the best, no, they can be better, and it's my place to help fund them to make sure they are better.
Mr. Litigant, I don't care what kind of police chief you have, good, bad, or indifferent, crime is going to happen. And during these economic times as we're having today, it's going to happen even more because people don't have resources that they need to survive, and that keeps the police busy. If you look at Sanford Herald on any given day, you look down there, you don't see people being killed or anything. You see little petty things happening that people are breaking in houses, they're taking things at Walmart, belts. You see all these things that are happening. I don't care how many policemen you put out there, you can't watch everybody. And if you want to do anything about crime, over the past years, if you look at some of the things that the police department has done to help Sanford, I can remember, I know some people in here can remember when you could go down Garden Street, and before you get down there, you have a crowd around your car trying to sell you drugs. And this hadn't been too long ago. You used to go down Wall Street, and you would have people coming up to your car solicited. And these things were worked on by the police department, and I think you see a difference in everything that we're doing with the crime situation here in Sanford at this time.
Law enforcement and crime prevention are the #1 responsibility of the city government. Recently had a homicide, double homicide, where folks are up in arms because the person's alleged to have done it, not been convicted yet. But the person's alleged to have done it has a history of homicide and was convicted of manslaughter. I can tell you, without hesitation, that 99.5% of the time, our district attorney's office reduces or bleeds out a serious crime is because there are deficiencies in the case. If they have a slam dunk case, they have no incentive to reduce a serious crime. Now, the deficiency may not be anything the police department can do about it. But the primary witness in every single prosecution is the detective and the patrol officers that responded to and investigated the crime. When there is a pervasive attitude that says, once the charge is made, our investigation is done, we don't need to keep looking to see if maybe this isn't the person that did it, that we have better evidence for somebody else, that we satisfied the political burden to make sure that somebody got charged. That's not what leads to convictions. That's not what leads to keeping those people off the street. And we do have a fair amount of the Walmart shoplifters and other stuff, and we do have folks getting charged in these offenses. But I can tell you, I'm in it every day. I represent guilty clients. I represent not guilty clients. You don't have folks getting charged that are not guilty in serious crimes unless there's a deficiency in the investigation. Folks that wanted to get that charge made without worrying about whether they have enough evidence to establish something beyond a reasonable doubt. And that comes from the city council on down.
Well, what's the new DA's name? Vernon Stewart.
Right.
Well, we're in our own district now, and I understand this fellow, Vernon Stewart, who's the new DA, is really playing a tough hand. And from what I understand, prescription drugs are now as big a problem as controlled substance drugs. Young people apparently figure that they're sterile drugs since they're sold at the drugstore and there's no problem taking these. But as far as the crime, it's always been a problem ever since that fella King knocked his brother 8. So every community has to fight crime now. I read the Fayette paper. Crime's a big problem down there. And they have these zone maps where they will pinpoint where these crimes are happening, and then they'll have extra boots on the ground in those areas. Maybe that's what we need to do here. I'm not sure.
Richard, you made three good points. The crime, Jimmy hit on it. It's get out of the cars. One thing I'm noticing walking the streets is the fact that individuals are jaded. They think they called the police and they may not, or may see something happen. They may see somebody arrested, or they may see somebody get their hands slapped. They're tired of calling. And so really, walk the streets, go knock on doors, get in touch with people. You know, when they started handing out speeding tickets 40 years, 50 years ago, that immediately took the police officer and made him a bad guy. We got to get the police officer back to looking like the good guy. And the way you do that is to knock on doors. The second thing you do is you go ahead and take that mobile precinct unit they've got and you move it out to the troubled neighborhoods. You park it there overnight. You park it on the weekends. You have officers going in and out of it. That's going to upset some people. That's going to, you know, it will work. Jimmy mentioned the prescription drug problem. Yeah, terrible problem. I get people that all rent an apartment too that seem completely normal. Within 3 months, they're fried. It is just really, really disappointing. I know Tracy Carter at one point in time had talked about identifying some of the doctors at some point that were prescribing most of these drugs. Maybe that's not a bad idea. I don't know. That'd be Ed's department. Bobby made a point that we have not had a major crime that hasn't been solved. He's right. You know, they do a good job on the big crimes, but the little ones, they could get a little bit better public perception. You mentioned about me being on the north end of the ward I'm in. I guess if I can't do it, then J.D. Williams can't do it where he's at, since he's on the far south end of Carr Creek. So, that's it.
Well, in Jonesboro, we've accepted me as a stepchild.
Okay.
Yeah, you watch the little Christmas decorations.
Hold on, Madam Chair.
We'll get you better ones.
One or two.
We'll get you better.
Are there other questions? Are there other questions? I want to remind you that we are out of here at 9 o'clock sharp. So please, let me give us your questions.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Johnson, and I have a question for Mr. Page.
Yes, ma'am.
I heard you talk about crime, and that's your major concern, crime in the city of Sanford. I know that you said that you were an attorney, but my question is this. You said you defend guilty as well as innocent. So do you defend the guilty any different than you do the innocent, whether the police officer is there or not?
Yes, ma'am. I will work with a not guilty person. When I have somebody who's demonstrably guilty, my position changes. I'm begging the DA or the judge for mercy for my client. But by and large, if I represent somebody that the state has a slam dunk case, there's not a whole lot I can do except tell them, look, if we plead guilty, we might get sentence, get them all sentenced together. If we risk a trial and lose, then the judge is probably going to boxcar one after the other after the other. There's some reasons back there, and we all lament how, for a lot of serious crimes, we don't get much of a plea offer.
You've been an attorney. I mean, I'm not anything, I'm not an expert on law or anything, but I watch a lot of TV. And I know that they have to defend. They say, I must defend the guilty equally as the not guilty.
Absolutely.
So so when you say that you have a difference in it, is that true to what you're supposed to be doing?
Well, let me be clear. We fundamentally believe that the best way, there's not a perfect way, but the best way that humans on this earth can come up with the truth in a case is by having both sides go at it. So we have an adversarial system of justice. And the DA prosecuting the case, he's sworn to do justice, and I represent a client, I'm sworn to be a zealous advocate. I am equally zealous, meaning I work just as hard to do the best as I can for each of my clients. How I do that, what I have to work with, changes based on the particular circumstances of each case. It may change based on who the DA is that's prosecuting it, because I know they're each individuals and they do things a little bit differently. The nature of the charge, how the potential jurors feel about that kind of a case in Lee County, all of that and any number of things affects how I go about defending each case. So in a sense, I don't defend any case exactly the same, but I give my best for every client that I have.
Okay, that's my question. It sounds like you didn't give your best to the one that had a little doubt about it.
No, absolutely not.